both on Bible Discovery TV as well as our Twitch viewers joining us from our Twitch channel, To Christ and Consoles. This is a program where we take a lot of questions, ideas that have been put forward in chat, things that we've been studying on our own, and some of them just diving deep into them, trying to express God's truth in His Word, and trying to get people equipped, Christians equipped, as well as sort of rebutting a lot of critics' claims. It's been really good on Twitch, by the way. I've been doing a lot of more reading online at the end of my solo streams. I've been reading through a few books that I've been studying, which has been very good and edifying. I hope that you guys have been tuning in for that. So today, I'm sure maybe you're reading the title of this and thinking...
Hey, really quick,
yes.
Who are you?
Oh, hello. I'm Chris. For those of you who don't know yet, I'm Chris, otherwise known as Mefuki, Mefuki on Twitch. And you are?
I'm Brandon, also known as Octo, OCTO on Twitch.
Yeah, and so yeah, that's what we do. But for those of you looking at the title, you may have been wondering, this seems like kind of a heavy topic, and it's going to be a heavy topic. It's going to be a little bit in depth, but I really hope that it'll answer some questions you might have. We're kind of going to take this at a two-pronged approach, both to answer the critics' claim that the Bible says that you have to marry a rapist, and as well as talking to victims of sexual assault as well. So, as we start this, we have to remind people that God cares immensely about victims and justice. God sees all people and sees victims and can help them and desires to do so. It doesn't mean that that pain isn't there, that it's not a real thing. It's something to say. Some people say like, "Oh, get over it," kind of attitude about sexual assault. Well, it's a very in-depth crime, and we'll get into the level of crime that the Bible puts it out to be. We should be looking to God's Word for our guidance as Christians, and even some of you tuning in maybe aren't Christians, this is what we should be doing. This is what God's Word says to be doing. Looking to God's Word instead of the world's standard of justice. And there is no true justice outside of God's law. God's the one who institutes justice. He's the one who creates what is just, or what defines what is just or unjust. So, with that sort of as the preamble, I want to get into understanding the critics' claim about Deuteronomy 22:28. That's Deuteronomy chapter 22, verse 28. But we're going to do a little bit of contextual analysis. So we're going to be talking about previous verses. So there's something we need to get into first when we discuss this. The foundation is that there's one of the critical things about understanding any text, even modern texts, even writings of various people from various parts of the world, is a to put things into context. And one of those things is a cultural or historical context versus a modern context. So sometimes words or concepts can be different depending on the culture or the history, and words can have different meanings, etc. So we have to understand that as well. So I want to give an example now. So the passages in Deuteronomy talk about case law. Case law is basically an example of something you pull a principle from. So I'm going to give an example. In the same chapter, this is chapter 22, but it's verse 1. I'm going to read this and see if you can follow me here. You shall not see your brother's ox or his sheep going astray and ignore them. You shall take them back to your brother. And this is verse 2. And if he does not live near you, and you do not know who he is, you shall bring it home to your house, and it shall stay with you until your brother seeks it. Then you shall restore it to him. All right, so here we have case law. Why do I say case law? Why do I say there's a principle there? Well, a critic might argue and say, well, we don't have ox or sheep anymore. Therefore, that law doesn't mean anything because there's no ox or no sheep involved, right? Or what if a lawyer, even in the ancient historical context, was a lawyer looked at this and said, well, this case didn't involve a sheep or an ox, so I guess you're scot-free.
It's letter of the law versus spirit of the law.
Right. So we're looking at case law of, well, the point is that it's something that belongs to your brother. You will take care of it and make sure that it's returned to your brother. So this is a very common argument about God, the God of the New Testament being so loving, and the God of the Old Testament being really harsh. And but it's the same God. It's the same God who wrote the Old and New Testaments. So that's an example. So we take the principles of God's word, and we try to understand them, even if though they don't apply directly to us because we don't have sheep or oxen. According to God's law, if you're violated, you are innocent, a victim, but you're still loved by God, a whole image bearer. And we will see on the passages that we're going to read that God doesn't put the victim of sexual assault in a position to be denigrated or to be further abused, but rather to protect that woman.
Well, yeah, you don't. The Bible makes it pretty clear that the victims are blameless and are free of all punishment.
Right.
Because they didn't do anything wrong.
Right. So, yeah, and part of that is, again, it's responding to the critic who says, like, the Bible is this harsh book. It's an archaic book. It's meant to keep women down. I'm sure you've heard this before about the Bible is anti-woman. So, but yeah, that's the setup. Is that God is involved in upholding the personhood of a victim rather than denigrating them. They're still a whole image bearer, still loved by God, despite how a sexual assault victim might feel. And we may balk at the intensity of these passages, but they were always meant to be serious things. They were always meant to be. These were a set apart people. These were people who had seen the very presence of God, and they were led through the desert for 40 years by day and by night, a cloud by day, a pillar of fire by night. Like they were given manna from heaven. They were seeing constant blessing, tangible blessing, and they swore to themselves to God to serve Him wholeheartedly. And so that's the kind of the context in which these laws are given, and why it's such a serious thing, because they were a set apart people. They're meant to be a set apart people for God. So, and I also want to make a mention. This is sort of a side note at this point, but despite the modern misunderstanding about the way law was done back then, there were courts. It wasn't. We're not talking Inquisition witch trials here. We're talking about whenever you see the term "the elders at the city of the gate," taking someone to the elders of the city of the gate. The elders were basically a form of court, judges, jury, to define punishments or absolution. So, we start, I guess, with. Actually, let's go to Leviticus. In regards to 24. There it is. 24, verse 20. And of course, this is a famous passage. This is more going into sort of like, yes, there were courts in the Old Testament. Going into the famous eye for eye passage.
Taken out of context.
Taken context.
Pretty much 100% of the time.
A lot of times in pop culture, you hear it a lot in just fantasy and sci-fi and all sorts of things. But it's actually from the Bible, the idea of an eye for an eye. What does that mean, though? Well, let's read it, and then we'll read some commentaries. I'll first start at verse 17 and then get to verse 20. Whoever takes a human life shall surely be put to death. Whoever takes an animal's life shall make it good, life for life. If anyone injures his neighbor, as he has done, it shall be done to him. Fracture for fracture, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. Whatever injury he has given a person shall be given to him. Whoever kills an animal shall make it good, and whoever kills a person shall be put to death. You shall have the same rule for the sojourner and for the native, and for I am the Lord your God. So again, it's emphasizing the unilateral law giving as well. Of course, I'm reading from this right now. Is my ESV study Bible, and it refers to the lex talionis, which is the eye for eye law. Now, I'm going to read it here. These verses deal with the principle of the lex talionis, which is Latin for the law of retribution. It is a form of ironic justice in which the punishment for the crime is found in the crime itself. The principle applies to everyone in Israel without exception. It is unlikely that the fracture for fracture, eye for eye, tooth for tooth actually implies mutilation as the punishment for the offender, but rather the value of the injured member will be the imposed fine. And this is not like you're just saying that. You're just trying to cover it up. Well, no, it's culturally, that's what they did. That's what the Jews did. This law, when properly applied, guides the judges in assessing damages and sets a limit on the thirst for vengeance. Since this is a rule for judges to follow, it should not be invoked in ordinary daily relationships. So there's a few rules there about the eye for eye. Is about.
It just means punishment has to equal crime.
Equal the crime. So again, there's some things in our modern courts that we would say were just, but they're actually from the Bible. So one of them is the punishment for the crime. So we have.
Someone steals your lunch, they have to provide
lunch. They provide lunch, like pay back that amount.
Yeah.
Assessing damages, and also it was meant to be a limit for vengeance. So later on, I'm going to read a different passage in the same book, talking about you should not met out vengeance or get revenge. And indeed, it says you can actually relate this passage to Matthew chapter 5, and talking about not invoking this in terms of daily relationships. So this is meant to be the eye for eye thing is meant to be done in a judicial context, not in a day-to-day life, person-to-person thing. So I think what is it like the latest Punisher on Netflix pulled this with the eye for eye thing.
Yeah, and
it's like, as soon as you start talking about it in terms of like person to person, you've taken this out of context. So there's an example of that. That's an example of sort of like the law that was put in place. It's not a barbaric law. It's a law about fairness and justice. All right, so.
Yeah, when you take away the pop culture meaning of it, really it's like what Gandhi popularized, right? When saying an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind.
Yes.
As soon as he said that, everyone was just like, "Oh,
that's so profound."
Whoa, you're so smart. The Bible's stupid.
Sounds wrong.
So as soon as you put it in context, like
yeah.
everything in the Bible, you put it in context and in culture, and it's like, oh yeah, that actually is how it works now.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Because we were founded on
Judeo-Christian values, and we've kind of lost that now as we've become more biblically illiterate. We've lost our understanding of what these things even mean. So we're going to get into right into Deuteronomy 22 now, talking about the issue of sexual ethics in terms of the rapists and victims.
It shows you how serious God takes sexual sins.
Yes.
And how seriously we should take them.
Yes, indeed. So let's start at verse 22. So preface with that. If a man is found lying with the wife of another man, okay, so adultery, both of them shall die. The man who lay with the woman and the woman. And so you shall purge the evil from Israel. There was...
In that context, it's consensual, by the way.
It's consensual because... why would I say that? Well, if you take it out of context, you go, oh, well, then I guess just sex is bad. Well, there's a reason why it's written out the way that it is. So in verse 23, it's funny just to emphasize just how serious adultery was taken. Adultery was...
Well, not until just recently was adultery not taken it seriously. Adultery in the 40s was a like jailable offense.
Is that so?
Yeah, it was a crime, and you could go to jail for it.
Oh well, there you go.
So not only until just recently have we just like decided free love, we don't care.
Yeah.
So
the last 50 years or so, free love, the free love movement in the 70s. That's a whole different episode.
Mm-hmm.
So in verse 23, if there is a betrothed virgin, so it's someone who is engaged basically, and a man meets her in the city and lies with her, then you shall bring them both out to the gate of that city, and you shall stone them to death with stones. The woman because she did not cry out for help, though she was in the city, and the man because he violated his neighbor's wife. So you shall purge the evil from your midst. Now, first of all, understanding historical, cultural context. So we have the betrothed virgin. That's more like being engaged. It's not like the same how it is today. So this is why we can't take our modern understanding and put them into the text. We have to read the text as it is. What did it mean to the people who it was written to? And what was their culture like in which God spoke to them and said, don't do this, don't do this. So engagement these days is we're super going to get married, and that's great. And then, of course, you see on TV and pop culture, you can just sort of go, I don't want to get married anymore, and then you just stop.
Yep.
In the Jewish context, in the Old Testament context, you were as good as married if you were betrothed, if you were engaged. So this is very similar to what was happening in verse 22.
You just didn't get the same benefits as being married.
Yes, there was a betrothal period, and
there's
then
a period for the man to go make the house ready and to everything like that to prepare for the bride.
Yes.
Then to go take her from her parents.
Yes, and there was 50 shekels. There was shekels that needed to be paid to the bride's father. It was a dowry, basically. It was to encourage the stability of families.
Very expensive price too.
It's an expensive price. I think I have a note here. Where is it here? We're not sure how much it was, but it was a hefty price. Workers, I have a note here in my ESV Study Bible. Workers in old Babylon times earned half a shekel per month. So 50 shekels of silver, or silver, was it? 50 shekels. So it was a fine, so like it was a hefty sort of fee. So there's that to consider as well. So the betrothed virgin, and a man meets her in the city and lies with her. Okay, so modern context. Again, if you're eisegeting the text, so eisegesis means taking your own thoughts and putting them into the text. So if you're eisegeting the text, you'd be like, oh, I see. So if you're in a city and sexual assault happens, then it's okay. then both of them should just be put to death. That's what the Bible says, right? Well, no. If you're exegeting the text, so exegeting the text means reading the text as it is and then pulling the meaning from the text. So if you're exegeting the text, cities were not like how we have them today. They weren't metropolises. They were, you might say, well, this isn't gonna work because like I have double pane glass on my house. I can shout to someone in my own house and they wouldn't be able to hear me. They didn't have double pane glass in the Old Testament. So the implication here is that it is something consensual. What's happening is something consensual. A betrothed virgin, not yet married, but basically engaged virgin, meets a man in her. A man meets her in the city and lies with her. So now we have no windowed cities. Cities were much smaller. And you shall bring them both out to the gate of that city. And you shall stone them to death with stones, because remember, the context is adultery was punishable by death because it was that serious of a crime. It was that much of a violation and breakdown of the family and an affront to God's prescribed order. You shall bring them out to the city, and you shall stone them to death with stones. The young woman, because she did not cry out for help, though she was in the city. So, the context here is someone should have been able to hear her.
Yeah.
Because cities are small. There's no windows in our modern sense.
Yeah, these small cities were tightly packed.
Yes.
It's like when you see any movie where there's like, or if you go to the Middle East, but like any movie where you see like a Middle Eastern bazaar, where everyone's tightly packed, trying to sell each other stuff, working with like each other. That's what it was like.
Yeah.
So it's not like they're like 4 miles that way, and there's nothing there.
Yeah,
that's not what it's like.
Right. Well, here's the interesting thing is that in the next verse, it actually gives a case law for that that sort of instance.
Yeah.
So just note the situation.
It means
here.
when help was available. But
when help was available, she didn't. So like the idea is that it's consensual. So notice the why they're being put to death. The young woman, because she did not cry for help, though she was in the city, and the man, because he violated his neighbor's wife. So he was in the wrong because he violated her. That was enough for him to put him to death. But her, because she consented by not crying out for help. Now you might go, but what if something happened where she just couldn't, or no one heard her? What a terrible thing! The Bible is such a anti-woman book. Read the next verse. Okay, so we're going to go to verse 25. Also, the end of verse 24 is, so you shall purge the evil from your midst. Once again, the Bible emphasizing, I am involved, I care about justice. I care about things being made right and fair and good. So, 25. But if, in the open country, a man meets a young woman who is betrothed, and the man seizes her and lies with her, then only the man shall die. But you shall do nothing to the woman. She has committed no offense punishable by death. For this case is like that of a man attacking and murdering his neighbor, because he met her in the open country, and though the betrothed woman cried for help, there was no one to rescue her. So we clearly see a distinction made. If there wasn't a distinction, there wouldn't be case law and then case law. So we have betrothed virgin, a man meeting her in the city. Betrothed virgin meeting betrothed, a man meeting her in the country. What's the distinction? Well, the distinction is no one was there to help her when she cried out for help versus she didn't cry for help. So, in this situation, in verse 25, only the man's put to death, and God's word makes it clear that she's done nothing wrong. So, to that point, the terms about like you heard the term like she had it coming, or she deserved it, or she egged him on. There's no stipulation where it's like if the woman did this or said this or was dressed this way, then the woman shall be put to death because of that. So here it's like he lay with her open country, She cried out for help. No one was there to help her. If it's found out, he's the one who was put to death.
It's only the abuser.
And she is completely absolved. She's not only is she absolved. I wouldn't even say it's absolved, because absolved implies that there was a sin and then it's absolved. According to this, there's no offense punishable by death. So, there's also a distinction made in the verbs that are used. If you really want to get into that as well, like about verse 23 talking about verse 22 lying with. And then verse 25, seizing a woman, and the man seizes her and lies with her. So that's, again, more of the forces. Some other translations say forces.
Yeah, it's the difference between consensual and non-consensual.
Yes, exactly. And notice that the woman is permitted to cry out to prevent this injustice. So again, the critic making this claim that the Bible is anti-woman, just women have to just be sex slaves or whatever. There's a provision made in the law where women are presumed to be able to cry out for help. Like, it's a presumption. And a side note here as well about judicial things. You've heard the term innocent until proven guilty. That's from the Bible. We get that idea from the Bible because you're presumed innocent until you go to the elders of the city at the gate, the court, and you engage in this trial to understand what's been happening. Let's see. The main point here is whether you're a believer or unbeliever, you would be declared innocent before God. Like, maybe you might feel a certain way as a victim, but before God declares you innocent. So I want people who have been victims in the past take encouragement from that. It's like, you're not a victim in the sense that something has been taken from you, and that you're not a whole person, because that's God is saying that you did nothing wrong, nothing that is you're not a lesser person because this has happened to you. You were sinned against in such a way that God declared the act something worthy of death, and we can get into penology, the study of punishments, and like discussing, should we be applying this today? Like, what criminal crimes should be punishable by death? We can get into that some other time. But the point is that it's a very serious crime. God said that it was something worthy of death. Is that heinous? I want to get into going back to about judicial law. It's funny because this morning I was just going over my notes and I accidentally flipped to the wrong reference, and I wanted to flip to Deuteronomy 19:15. Where is it? Yes, here it is. So talking about judicial crimes. A single witness, referring to when you're in court and someone makes an allegation against you, a single witness shall not suffice against a person for any crime or for any wrong in connection with any offense that he has committed. Only on the evidence of two witnesses or three witnesses shall a charge be established. So, again, it's not witch trials, it's not Inquisition. It's actually this is one of the passages that actually stopped the witch trials in America. Was going back to the Bible. So it's not a witch trial. It's a court that is fair and just. You bring forth 2 or 3 independent lines of witnessing to make your case.
And I think it's pretty safe to say that modern times a witness doesn't necessarily have to be a person. Forensic
that's right.
Forensic science is essentially a witness.
Yes. DNA evidence
DNA and
all of this. Yes, video evidence, stuff like that. So yes, I would definitely say that. That's another example of case law.
Yeah.
Where it's like that's essential.
It just means I couldn't take you to court and be like, he punched me in the face and took my wallet.
Right.
But no one saw it.
Well,
and there was no evidence. I came in, I looked completely fine, and he had a black eye.
Yeah.
And it was all fine.
Yeah. Well,
But he punched me and took my wallet, and his wallet's hanging out of my pocket. Like, I couldn't just do that.
Right.
Like, okay, one witness, done.
Yeah. Well, there was quick side note. I'm doing a study on because of someone brought up the question about Inquisition and witch trials. That's why I keep mentioning it. And we're gonna maybe do an episode about that in the future. But during that time period, you could accuse someone of a crime, and you couldn't. There was no defense attorney. You couldn't defend. You could defend yourself on your own, but.
Well, the problem was they were like, you would only defend yourself if you have something
to hide. Yes.
So it was
there was actually a rule where, like, I don't know if it was a written rule or an unwritten rule, but if you tried to defend yourself and say, if you tried to question the validity of the questions, it meant you were guilty.
It was like, it made no sense.
Anyway, sorry.
It was just a bunch of superstition.
It's superstition, and it was a creedal doctrine sent down from the Pope of the time, Innocent III, and all that. But
anything but.
Yes, exactly. But once you got back to the Bible, everyone was like, "Oh, wow, that's so just, right?" So I wanted to take another detour here because this morning I flipped to the wrong reference, and I accidentally flipped to Leviticus 19:15 rather than Deuteronomy. And I just want to read God's word for, like, what is this? 4 verses? And just listen to people out there who were like, God's word is so unfair. God's word is so just. The Old Testament God is so cruel. You want just listen to Deuteronomy or Leviticus 15. Actually, let's go to 13. You shall not oppress your neighbor or rob him. The wages of a hired worker shall not remain with you all night until the morning. So if you have enough, respect your workers. If you have the money to pay them, don't wait a single night. Pay them the amount that you owe them as you contractually obligated to do so. You shall not curse out the deaf or put a stumbling block before the blind, but you shall fear your God. I am the Lord. Do not take advantage of those who are differently abled or disabled. So I love the way that the word is used. Don't curse the deaf because they can't hear you. Don't put something before the blind because they wouldn't know that you put it in front of them. But God knows. That's why it ends this way. Don't curse the deaf or put a stumbling block before the blind, but you shall fear the Lord your God. I am the Lord. So you shall fear God because God knows that you did that you cursed them out even though they couldn't hear you. So amazing. Wow.
It's just treat people like they're valued, like they're valuable because they are.
That's right. Verse 15. You shall do no injustice in court. You shall not be partial to the poor or defer to the great. But in righteousness you shall judge your neighbor. You shall not go around as a slanderer among your people, and you shall not stand up against the life of your neighbor. I am the Lord. So stand up against the life of your neighbor, false witness, lying about your neighbor to get them in trouble, to make other people see them as lesser than, that kind of thing. And verse 17, you shall not hate your brother in your heart, but you shall reason frankly with your neighbor. Look at that. Wow. There's a passage in the Bible that explicitly says, use your reasoning faculties to talk to your neighbor and reason things out. The Bible, right? Who'd have thought? But you shall reason frankly with your neighbor, lest you incur sin because of him. You shall not take vengeance. This is the passage I was talking about earlier. You shall not take vengeance or bear a grudge against the sons of your own people, but you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord. Which is prefaced a lot of times about I am the Lord. This is my law. I'm saying this. Amazing stuff. So that's an example I wanted to give, just how just God's law is, how much He's concerned with justice. And now I want to get to the big one that the critic would throw at the Christians. This is verse 28. After the passage about the young woman being seized out in the country and no one's out there to help her, the man dies. Verse 28. If a man meets a virgin who is not betrothed and seizes her, usage of the word seizes, and lies with her, and they are found, then the man who lay with her shall give to the father of the young woman 50 shekels of silver, and she shall be his wife, because he has violated her. He may not divorce her all his days. All right, so now that's pretty difficult, isn't it? Not if you're exegeting the text. So if you're exegeting, we know that in the Jewish world, Old Testament world, this is actually about the protection of the woman. I mean, it may sound hard to believe, but hear me out here. Because it also pertains to caring for her needs, the rights of her inheritance. At the end of the day, it's about a man being punished, a woman being protected. It's not a chauvinistic thing. Because normally, once it was discovered that she had been violated in this way, she would not be able to obtain wellness and security for life. So rather, this passage is meant to be a passage about this woman needs to be cared for, and if she's violated, no man will take care of her in the way that a husband should. So you took her as your wife, and now that you violated her, you must take care of her. You must take care of her. You must have issues of inheritance. So it's a protection for the woman. And it's hard to understand for us because we live in a different context. Marriage was not a temporary happiness contract. It was a place where it was an agreement, a covenant where you would take care of each other. You take care of the family, take care of the betterment of the society at large by taking care of your family and your wife and spouse. So, and of course, you might say, I couldn't stand to be married to a man like that. But this was guaranteeing, rather than her being left to the four winds, this was guaranteeing that she would have her daily needs met. Children would have a right to the laws of inheritance. They would receive the law. The firstborn would receive the inheritance from their union. So rather than understanding it in our modern context, this was a protection to say that women need to be an important part of the Israeli life, of the ancient Israelite life, rather than just cast aside, like if they're assaulted. So that's sort of the argument. That's the way I would take the argument. Of course, 50 shekels of silver as well is a bride price. I'm going to read the study Bible here for this. 50 shekels appears to be the bride price according to Exodus 22:16. The law seeks to protect the woman who is less likely to be married because she has been violated. That's basically what I've been saying. And then I'm going to go over here to my other study Bible. This is my NASB study Bible. Going to verse 28. If the woman was a virgin not pledged in marriage, then the man had to pay a fine, marry the girl, and keep her as his wife as long as he lived. And of course, with this, You might think this is incredibly cool, but with this, it's not as if he did this thing to her, and now that he's married to her, he owns her, and he can do whatever he wants with her. Well, no, she has to be protected and treated right, and
there's laws in
cared
place.
for. There's other laws in place about this
to make sure she is treated right and cared for.
Right. That's right. So,
and if they decide to have children, that they have to be treated right and cared for.
Right. So consider.
I notice I didn't say if he decides.
Right.
If they decide to have children.
And consider how it's done today. I mean, we can talk about again genealogy, but is it really so much better to have this crime happen, and then the woman, through taxes or what have you, then has to support her violator as they are in prison or what have you, right? So we can talk about prison versus capital punishment, but so that's how I would take that. So changing gears now. That's to answer the critic. We can't take off our Christian worldview when we address any issue. Our worldview is from the Bible. It's sola scriptura. So we need to understand things from the Bible, and that's what we have here in Deuteronomy 22. We live in light of what God says we are, not who we feel we are by being wronged in some way, and that we're not guilty in this context. So anyone out there, if you've been sexually assaulted, God's word says that you're not guilty for that. And yet understand, of course, that we are still sinners by nature, and that we need God's forgiveness and His help to live lives that will glorify Him. I don't have to experience exactly what you experience to come alongside you with truth. I just have to be a believer, and I have to be immersed in God's word. That's what I can do to help you. You know, I don't have to experience exactly the same thing. We're gonna get into that in the next episode, maybe talking about just the idea that unless you experience exactly what I experience, you can't speak to the issue. But I have God's word. I have God's revelation to tell me that this is what's true. This is the way you should be thinking about these issues. Me experiencing something or not experiencing something doesn't make God's word more true. I think that's the point. And I'm talking sort of broadly about God's word in regards to this as well. So, as an encouragement for victims out there, not as a command, but we see here from Deuteronomy 22 that God absolutely gives the right to the victim to cry out for help, and God's concerned with you as a victim to seek out justice. As an encouragement, you should report sexual assault and abuse, both in terms of getting justice for yourself, but also in terms of loving neighbor. You would actually be fulfilling multiple parts of God's law and God's word if you reported sexual abuse. You're getting justice for yourself, to see what wrongs can be righted, but also loving neighbor, because, you know, a few months ago, as of this recording, there was that Harvey Weinstein guy, right? And there's the Me Too hashtag, and all these women coming out and saying like, "Oh yeah, I was abused too." And I just think to myself, if the first woman who had been abused by that man or by the men in the Me Too hashtag thing, if they had sought out justice, those men would not have been able to carry out as many assaults as they had. The fact that one person was responsible for that many sexual assaults and no one was willing to come forward. I want it to be clear that you're actually following God's word. You're actually following the word of God when you seek justice. And then you're loving people, you're loving your neighbor because you're preventing them from harming them as well.
And it's important to remember that no one's going to, if you report something like this, no one's going to look at you and be like, well, it's your fault that this happened.
Right.
Or you're partially to blame because it happened. Or they shouldn't, is how I should put it.
Yeah. Well,
you're blameless and you're still as valuable as you were.
Yes, exactly. This is the point, is we serve an audience of one. That's who we serve and who we work for. So the whole world could say that, oh, you were asking for it or whatever. But God says, no, you weren't. God says you have every right to cry out for help. And that that you have committed no offense punishable by death. No, there's nothing there to be punished. So people may say that you've done all this stuff, but in regards to this issue, there's freedom in Christ. To remember that God loves you. He wants you to repent and put your trust in Him, put your trust in Jesus, so you can find wholeness and help through the indwelling of the Holy Spirit, and then seek justice, and seek it quickly too. Many times the longer that sexual assaults are unreported, the harder it is to prove it happened. It also gives an opportunity for the perpetrators to continue on in their sin against other people. So if you want to love neighbor and get justice, please report it. Yeah, I think that covers it. So hopefully we responded to both the critic and the victim alike in this topic. Remember, God's word's a beautiful thing. Read it every day. Get your mind wrapped up in it. The Jewish Shema, Deuteronomy 6:4, talking about you need to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. To be talking about His word and meditating on it day and night, and when you walk along the road, when you sit down, when you lie down, when you rise up, because it has the answers for it. It is God breathed. It is all we need for all of life and godliness. And so I want to thank you. Hopefully hopefully you guys followed all that, and hopefully take it all to heart. And with that, we'll see you next time.
Get ready for the next episode. Really easy topic, racism.
Yeah.
So see you then.
It'll be good.
Check out our other videos and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter and friend us on Facebook. Feel free to check Chris and I out over on twitch.tv/ZarOcto and make sure to leave a like. See you guys next week.